evening, everyone. This is Gwen Allen Karsten, and I am the Executive Director for Kent Black Action Commission. And one of KBAC's projects that we have developed over the years is civic engagement, whether that be by voter registration or, as we are doing, inviting candidates out to answer questions, meet with the community, and present themselves as whether they're running or not. We want to hear from them. As an endorsement, we do not endorse candidates. We are a 501c3 organization, nonprofit organization, and we do not endorse any candidates. We like to engage with all candidates, but we do not have anyone specifically that we will be raising funds for or anything like that. So I just wanted to make that clear. Now, with that in mind, we are appreciative of our candidates who have showed up today, and we hope that we have made it comfortable for them to be here to answer the questions and relay that out to the community at large. So we appreciate you taking the time to look at the presentation, and hopefully you may have had some questions that are answered for you during this time. So we appreciate you taking the time. We appreciate you always being engaging with KBAC, and if there's anything that we can do to help and serve the community better, we're looking forward to doing that. Again, this is Gwen Allen Karsten, the Executive Director for Kent Black Action Commission. Thank you very much.
Greetings and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Kent Black Action Commission Live Stream Candidate Forum 2024. My name is Charles Karsten. I am the Operations Manager for KBAC and Moderator for this forum. I'm also the Senior Advisor to our Executive Director, Gwen Allen Karsten. KBAC has been, since the beginning of 2011, providing the local community with information and the voice to share their concerns with our elected officials. Mr. David Schrier of DC Productions providing video and production services for this forum. On behalf of KBAC, we thank you for your time, your participation, and for tuning in into this forum. We also ask for your patience during this forum. Our goal for this forum is to provide you, the voter, access to the candidates vying for your vote to become your elected representative. We also want to thank Green River College for helping us host this event. And now I have a statement about voting rights. It's important for citizens to realize that to influence legislative policies at the federal and state levels, you must begin at the local level. Using your vote to build your community, your county, and your state. The local level is where your vote can be the most impactful. Voting rights are under assault in many states across the country. Your vote is your voice. Use your vote. Thank you. Our first candidate that is coming up is Mia Gregerson. She is the member of the 33rd District, and she's also position number 2. And she would start with a opening statement and finish with a closing statement. And we have questions for her, and we'll get to that. I do want to introduce Representative Mia Gregerson.
Thank you, KBAC, and thank you, Mr. Carlson, for putting this forward today. It's always such a great opportunity to be here to express some of the things that we're all hearing in the community and the things we're working on, and to be challenged and held accountable. I'm very grateful for all of the feedback that I've had over the years and the participation. But as you have heard already today, that voting rights and access to making sure that these elections are held free and fair is an attack that we're all facing right now. And that is how I spend a lot of my time, is here in the district, deeper in our communities, to have people understand the connection to the power of their voice and their vote, to find our shared definitions. Sometimes we say community, or we identify our problems but don't think about how that affects others. As you can imagine, as a chair of the Members of Color Caucus, we're about 46% of the caucus. We are not a monolith. And here in Kent, I feel like we have those same issues, and so we are stronger together, and I'm excited to have a robust dialogue with you today. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, first question. One of the daily challenges in South King County and across the state is transportation, the movement of people and material. If reelected, what are your transportation priorities for the South King County region during the next legislative session in Olympia?
Yeah, that's a great question. Transportation is one of the things that we are unique about when it comes to people wanting to come through our community as fast as they can, but they don't necessarily stay here. And so we always have this dichotomy of wanting to have robust investments in the transportation and freight mobility system, but we also have the impacts that are related to that, whether it's the noise abatement that we've talked about in the past here in Kent, slowing down vehicles, because we have more folks perishing on our streets. We also have infrastructure that's cracking and falling apart that's making it also difficult. We have lighting challenges, darker streets, and we also have the health and wellness of everything related to the transportation system. I'm going to use my moment just to talk a little bit about the differences in the budgets. I've heard commitments that raising revenue for the transportation system that is also billions of dollars in deficit will not be asked from the appropriations side of things in the appropriations budget. So as appropriations vice chair, that is something that will be very important to us, for those of us that care about all of the different needs in our community that are beyond transportation needs. So that's one thing. So again, making sure these budgets have bright lines in both their needs but also their solutions. I also recognize that the Climate Commitment Act has been a way that we're able to invest hundreds of millions of dollars in our communities related to carbon reduction. And some of that, yes, are HEPA filters and, double pane windows and grants to communities, EV buses. But also it's about soil initiatives and biodiversity and pesticide oversight and sustainable aviation fuel. We know here in Washington State, we have a woody biomass. And so working with our universities, in particular Washington State University, to make sure that we bring up the manufacturing component to this, so that as more aircraft are committing to this, to sustainable aviation fuel, being Alaska Airlines, our hometown carrier, we are ready to go. So that is one of the focuses that I will be working on. Just got back from Singapore that also has a similar initiative, similar focus.
Very good. Very good. In fact, that kind of leads right into my second question, which is on the topic of environmental protection. What is being done within the region to support this effort?
Environmental protections?
Yes.
Well, even just recently, as recent as today, is really trying to understand, going back to those common definitions, is if we're thinking about trees in our community in an urban and rural, right? Kent has both rural and urban. We have small farms, larger farms, not as large as Eastern Washington. We are rusty versus dusty in Washington, right? We have farmers that are sending apples, blueberries, wine, potatoes around the world. And then we are also farmers trying to make sure that we have the protection, the environmental protections that we need. And some of that is through incentivizing, and some of that is through education, through good factual data. We know that we are in not only a housing crisis, but if we're not careful, in a food crisis. We know how many people are suffering from hunger and lack of affordable, healthy foods. All of that is related to the healthy environment. And I think that going back to the Climate Commitment Act, one of the things that I will be prioritizing and continuing to do is to not only implement the HEAL Act, but also ensure that those of us with overburdened communities, which is by data a lot of cities, but to continue to dig deeper on why it is that the priorities are here in the urban setting.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Thank you. The third and final question for you. One of your major accomplishments is the passage of House Bill 2368, which is assisting refugees and immigrants, which passed in March of 2024. Please tell us why you supported this bill, and are there any measurable updates you can share with us?
Sure. Thank you for that question. And I think this is a good story of listening to the constituents in our community. In September, late August, September, I was invited to Pastor Jan's church to listen and learn about the issue of more and more people coming to our community with these needs. And the needs were greater than the resources and the ability to serve them were coming. And it was the first time, really, that I'd been faced with what is a humanitarian crisis. And in fact, if you look, our emergency dollars do not go towards a humanitarian crisis because there's no such definition. And we had just spent those resources all the way to zero in a recent fire in Spokane Valley. So it really left us with rolling our sleeves up to find out what agencies, what advocacy groups, what trusted messengers need to be in a space, a virtual space in this case, to think about where are we at, where are we going, and how do we do that? And using the legislative session, but also local partners as ways to think about this. Fast forward to the legislative session, 2368 was the policy that we all decided was the best way to move forward. And you can imagine, as you see now in the national front, that anything related to immigration or new members of our community, investing in human capital, workforce development, sometimes can be very partisan. So I used my relationships to work with people across the aisle, and as you see, that bill was bipartisan. Mm-hmm. That was very, very mindful, and the bill number is actually very high because we spent a little extra time just working on those relationships and the story and the messaging. So that is why we were able to pass that bill. And then we had some funding, one-time dollars that from the federal government still as leftover from the COVID era. Mm-hmm. And then also our own investments that we are already making, and just collaborating with agencies we never had before in this case. And that would be like Department of Commerce. Because as we know, most of this is housing. Most of this is just navigation of these systems that are so siloed and not talking to each other. So in fact, this is a good modernizing, good government bill. And that's really how we message it. Now, the update is that we're still, even as recently as this morning, trying to figure out, we have a hotel in this city. That hotel is vacant, I believe. What can we do to ensure that the resource that we have here is used to its best use? Sometimes having those conversations with those that oppose any use of that, to the people that want to use that, having that one space in together to come up with a solution, that's where we're at. That's where we want to go. We want to continue to break down these problems and come up with solutions. And that will help us with the investment needs as we go into next session.
Okay, thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Kim Schrier, currently your representative in the 8th Congressional District. It is a total honor to represent this district that is 10,000 square miles and stretches from Mount Rainier to Lake Chelan and Stehekin, from Sammamish to Ellensburg. And I have really brought the skills of my previous career as a community pediatrician into this career, looking out for the people in the 8th District. Those skills translate. Pediatricians listen, we find common ground, we're generally disarming and easy to get along with, and those skills have helped me both in having lots of town halls, taking the hard questions, meeting with everybody, but also in Washington, D.C., being able to find Republican colleagues and work with them on issues that matter to all of us. And so after 115 town halls and 6 years of experience bringing home real results that matter for the 8th District, everything from forestry to food banks to school-based health clinics to hydropower and salmon habitat, I look forward to hopefully earning your vote and continuing to represent you in a very bipartisan, pragmatic way in Washington, D.C.
If you
Well, my priorities reflect the priorities of people in this district. And after all of these town halls and meeting with constituents everywhere in the district, there are certain topics that just rise to the top. But one of them is that we're all feeling the squeeze at the grocery store, for example, with housing, with rent. And so taking on the cost of living is really important. Part of that is dealing with corporate gouging. The other part is preventing future corporate gouging, because if this Albertsons-Kroger merger goes through, that will only jack up prices at the grocery store higher and be bad for the farmers in this district who will get lowballed by Kroger. So that is one thing. The next is choice. People in this district understand that women need to make their own healthcare decisions. And frankly, I think the vast majority of us are outraged that the government is trying to butt into this issue and make decisions for us. And so as a woman doctor, I will always fight for women to make their own healthcare decisions. I trust women. And then third is a lot of people aren't feeling all that safe right now. We're seeing a lot of crime, a lot of property crime, and it's very hard then to feel secure in our communities. And so I've worked with retailers, I've worked with police to make sure that we can make common sense improvements and help in a way that both communities and law enforcement love. And what that comes down to is a couple key things. So I brought home, for example, $4 million for body cameras and infrastructure that goes with it. That keeps cops safe, it keeps the community safe, it has accountability and an accurate record of whatever transpired. It also de-escalates just by having the camera there. The second is co-responders and social workers, because police should not be the only ones responding to a mental health crisis that tends to spiral out of control. And so those co-responders, and the other is rapid DNA testing. So these are ways that I'm looking to keep our community safer and also build a crackdown on organized retail crime. Well, it might surprise you to know that even in a 10,000 square mile district that is very diverse in a lot of ways. I mean, it kind of feels like a miniature United States of America and lets me put my finger on the pulse of what people across this country and certainly across this district are thinking about. So here's the thing. We might not agree on everything. We might not have all the same concerns, but I just mentioned safety and costs and choice, and those resonate everywhere in this district. The other thing I want to say is that when I stand up for farmers and I stand up for trade and getting our hay farmers products and apples overseas, that means a lot to people in the more suburban, like Seattle suburban parts of this district too, because they want to know that I'm standing up for everybody. And so once again, I find common ground, I find the places we agree, and I go to bat for those things. And I deliver community projects, everything from wastewater treatment systems to school-based health clinics, everywhere in this district. So that's why a lot of Republican mayors have endorsed me. Well, let me just first say that I speak fluent Spanish, and so I sometimes go on Spanish radio in order to speak directly to my constituents. And even though sometimes we just jump to the conclusion that immigration is the #1 concern for the Latino population, they have the exact same concerns we have because they're feeling it at the grocery store. They're feeling sometimes unsafe in communities. And they also, no matter how you feel about abortion, just want the government to stay out of healthcare decisions. And so I first just want to say that we all share these common concerns. With regard to immigration, though, look, our country is a nation of immigrants. That is our tradition. We also have a crisis at our southern border, and we also have a crisis with security and fentanyl coming from China to Mexico to the United States and poisoning all of our communities. And so taking that on in earnest, working with both parties for border security is really important. And I am ready and willing to do that. I wish that the bill that Trump called his Republican colleagues in the Senate and said, vote against this bipartisan bill. I wish that had come to the House because we do need to do something about the crisis at the border that is both empathetic and common sense, respects dignity, and keeps borders secure. I will also say that something that matters a lot here is migrant workers for our farms. Suddenly, an apple orchardist will need a surge of people with skilled labor to pick those apples, but doesn't need workers the rest of the year. And so it really lends itself to a migrant visa program. We need to make that work better. I focus a lot on that. So anyway, this is a way of working for common sense immigration reform that helps the 8th District and also making sure we have secure borders that recognize the dignity of everybody. In closing, I would say thank you for your support in the past. It is an honor to represent you. I look forward to meeting you one-on-one personally, either at a town hall or a telephone town hall, or just walking down the street in your neighborhood. I would be honored to continue to earn your support and your vote, and we'll continue to work in a bipartisan fashion to move the ball forward and try to make this very broken Congress work better.
Hi, I'm Tina Orwall. I have the honor of representing the 33rd Legislative District in South King County. You know, one of my favorite parts of this job is to team up with the community, and I want to thank KBAC for being such a great partner. Almost every bill I introduce is really a team effort. Someone has reached out that something's not working. They know what the solution is, and their story is important. So that's why, you know, if it's anything from getting 988 and mental health into our schools to help our kids, or to really help people that are struggling to find housing or stay in their homes. It's all a team effort. And so again, I encourage you to reach out. If you have any questions or concerns, I'm always available for coffee. And again, it's an honor to serve our community.
Thank you. I am working on some priorities. One, I know housing comes up a lot, and one of my top priorities is to help expand affordable housing, which I would define as 30% of area and median income up to 60% area and median, which is the percentage of what people pay from their check. I've been working with a number of years with Open Doors. We worked on language access in the schools, and now I'm supporting them in what's going to be called a multicultural village that's going to be in the area by Sound Transit, and that'll bring in about 90 units of housing. And what I really like is a lot of the units are 3 and 4 bedroom, and it really is going to be also some of them prioritized for immigrant families that have children with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And again, I think you know, we got to create more housing, and then I was a co-sponsor on the rent stabilization, and will be so again, and we really want to get that through this year. Another priority that we're working on is really helping our K-12 and our higher ed students who are impacted by sexual assault. And so I'm doing listening tours with the student-led listening tours in higher ed, trying to see how we do a better job supporting them. Because at the end of the day, we want all of our students to be safe, and that's what all parents want. And so we want to make sure we're doing prevention and services for those that are impacted. I'm also working looking at the private equity firms that have been coming in and buying a lot of our properties, including single-family homes. I also love the Pure Kent downtown. I've spent some time there, and they're doing really good work with people recovering from substance use issues. The housing, it has to be a top priority. It absolutely, the rent stabilization, we're going to need to get creative on creating more housing, but also protecting the housing market that we have. And trying to do that strategy of how do we support more housing being built in Kent? How do we get rid of some of that red tape? The third thing is insurance, and I think we're all just a little blown away by the cost. And it's our car, it's our home. You already had groceries and gas, so it is a very difficult time. And I actually had someone reach out to me, and ironically, I reached out to one of the big carriers, and I said, well, why are we seeing these big increases in the car insurance? And I guess I was kind of expecting, these extreme weather, or we're paying the cost for other people in other parts of the country. And he said, there's too much Teslas in the area. What kind of answer is that, So I did reach out to the chair of our consumer protection, and I do think we want to look at why are we seeing these increases, and is there anything we can do at the state level to give relief or cap them in some way, because they are sometimes 20, 30, 40% increases in one calendar year with no change in the driving record. So I'm with you. I think the state should be reviewing it and seeing if there's something we could do to help kind of stabilize that market and help people out. Again, I look forward to coming and visiting you and spending time and learning more and seeing what we could do at the state level. So thank you.
Okay, now we give you another 90 seconds for a closing statement.
Again, it's an absolute honor to represent our beautiful community. I love spending time. I love to go into the schools. I think we were at 140 languages in the Kent School District. I think it might be up to 170. So it's beautifully diverse. I've been working a lot on language access. It's really important that all families feel welcome in the school, that kids are never the interpreter, that we have qualified interpreters. We're working on translation this year. But most of all, we want to come together as a community and make sure it's always welcoming. And, I go into the classrooms and I do legislative jeopardy, and I always tell them, go home and quiz your parents. I bet you know more about state government. And so, again, I think the young people in our district give me great hope, and I think that they have open hearts and minds. And so, again, my job is to listen and learn from all of you, from the community, so that I can be effective when I go down to Olympia. And again, I'm honored to be part of your team. Thank you.
And thank you.
All right. As we continue on this afternoon, this evening, we have had some great responses to our questions by our moderator, Mr. Charles Carson. And can we just take a second to give him a hand, please? He has done a great job, as always, so we appreciate him. So at this time, our moderator is going to be asking questions of candidate Dave Upthegrove, and he is running for the Commissioner of Public Lands for the state of Washington. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Karsten, and we'll see what you got for us.
Thank you. Greetings and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Kent Black Action Commission live stream candidate forum 2024. My name is Charles Karsten. I am the operations manager for KBAC and moderator for this forum. I'm also senior advisor to the executive director, Gwen Allen Karsten. KBAC has been, since the beginning of 2011, providing local community with information and the voice to share their concerns with our elected officials. Mr. Davis Turwa of BC Productions providing video and production services for this forum. On behalf of KBAC, we thank you for your time, your participation, and for tuning into this forum. We also ask for your patience during this forum. A goal for this forum is to provide you, the voter, access to the candidates vying for your vote to become your elected representative. We also want to thank Green River College for helping us host this event. And now let me make a statement about voting rights. It's important for citizens to realize that to influence legislative policies at the federal and state levels, you must begin at the local level, using your vote to build your community, your county, and your state. The local level is where your vote can be the most impactful. Voting rights are under assault in many states across the country. Your vote is your voice. Please use your voice. Thank you for that. And now with us, we have Mr. Dave Upthegrove, Council Member, King County Council Member Dave Upthegrove, who is running for Commissioner of Public Lands. The Commissioner of Public Lands oversees the Washington Department of Natural Resources. Given your background, what tools and or experiences would you bring to the department as an administrator if elected? And I think you hit every note in an opening statement there. So
I'll add a little bit to it. You know, running a state agency is a big, complicated job, and I'm excited to serve and lead an incredibly talented staff at that agency. And a lot of people don't realize, but in my current role as the chair of the King County Council, I supervise 5 legislative branch agencies and about 200 employees responsible for the budgeting, the human resources, the administration, and although the Department of Natural Resources is much larger, I think this experience has helped me develop and demonstrate good executive management skills. I also realized that the role of the commissioner can't do everything. The most important thing I'll do is hire good quality senior staff and empower them to do their jobs. And I want to hire the most diverse staff in the history of the agency in every sense of the word, because the commissioner is the chief spokesperson, the chief lobbyist. I will set the tone and the direction of the agency, and then hire those senior staff. You know, I'm not the one who will be out there with the chainsaw or with the fire hose, and so where I have areas where I'm still learning, there'll be talented professional career staff to fill in those gaps.
All right, thank you very much. Now, my second question, if elected, what are your top 3 priorities for the department?
They say in politics to keep it simple. So I've given this thought and I've kept it simple. Number 1, protect our clean air, clean water, and habitat. Number 2, improve wildfire prevention and response. That's a big part of this agency. And number 3, and I think this is the old Boy Scout in me from when I was a kid, I want to increase the recreational opportunities we have on public lands for people to get out and go hiking and hunting and fishing and whatever it might be, and particularly for people who don't always have those kinds of opportunities. And then throughout those 3 priority areas, I want to integrate the values of environmental justice and tribal sovereignty into all of that work. I don't view those as discrete priorities. Those are core values and need to be implemented into all the priorities.
Okay, very good. I believe, are there any questions in the audience? We have one there. Mr. Jones, if you would, please.
I got a couple of things here. One, for your previous job, it's not that much. This parking ride right over here on, what is that, James and Mika, run through the cross by the railroad track. Big bus. Right over here.
Yep.
Yeah.
Meeker and James.
Yes, that's between down the railroad track there.
Yeah.
All right. We need to do a little more about keeping that cleaned up. Yeah, that's one. And that's that on that one. Okay, now, the public land, a lot of people don't even know what that is. Don't even know what they do. They don't. And I've had a lot of people, especially seniors like me, so what is that? We never hear nothing of it. To voting time, then we see it on the ballot. Is there any kind of way that you can send out something every once in a while and let the people know about it, the citizens know about that, what it is? Because I live in the, you know where the Shag building is over here? That's where I live. And I help those people where we help each other when the time comes to vote. The first thing that land commission, what is that? And then I try to tell them the best I can. So if you could do that for me, I really appreciate it. Get the stuff out to let them know what it is.
I love that. I have found, as I've been on the campaign trail, I have to spend as much time explaining what the job is to people as it is running for it. And I'll take a minute now for those listening, too. I know you mentioned it in the opening. Washington State is one of only 3 states in the country that elects our director of the Department of Natural Resources. I don't know why. It's a populist thing about being out west. People like to vote on it. And so the Commissioner of Public Lands serves as the director of the Department of Natural Resources for the state of Washington. And then the next question is, what the heck does the Department of Natural Resources do? Yeah. And the primary goal of that, or a task of that agency, is to manage the state-owned lands. And the state of Washington owns 2 million acres of timberlands, forest lands. We own 1 million acres of agriculture lands, and we own nearly all of the aquatic lands, the shorelines of the state. And so this department has to make the decisions on who do we lease them to, what do we do on these lands. We are charged by our state constitution with managing them to generate money for certain government services. And schools get a little bit of money, not as much as people think, but some rural counties get money, fire districts, school districts, from the money the state generates from these lands. So the big tension often in this job is balancing that responsibility to raise money off the lands with what I believe is a bigger responsibility to all of the public to manage them in the public interest, for recreation, for clean air and clean water and spiritual values. And I think too often the industries that the state partners with to make that money drive the agenda. And I believe these state lands don't belong to the logging industry. They don't belong to big business. They belong to we the people. They're public lands. They're our lands and need to be managed in the public interest for all the people. And I think that's where my opponent and I diverge. My opponent is a longtime member of the Republican Congress in Washington, D.C., always voted on behalf of the oil industry, the logging industry, and I'm proposing a different path. And I think, this is a tremendous asset. I think of people who live here in Kent. I see young people whose idea of getting outdoors is running around in the back parking lot of their apartment building with glass on the ground. We need to have programs that get young people out into these beautiful spaces we have and educate them. There's careers to be had in forestry. And so I think with some imagination, this very sleepy job could become more connected to our community and do some positive things. But you're right. All my friends, when I'm running for office, you're running for what? Commissioner of what? But it's a very important. It's millions of acres of public lands and billions in public assets that it's responsibility to manage them and steward them for, not just to make money, but for the next generation.
Well, you answered. You brought a couple of highlights out there that I was going to ask you about, but you'd already done it. The one about the public land belongs to the public, not the big business people.
Amen.
And that always bothers me when I see them cutting trees and cleaning it up. And you did a good job on that, but I would appreciate if you would just, I'm not going to say if you get elected. You're going to get elected. Get some information out to the people so they know what you're doing, what that is all about.
I will. It's hard. I mean, it's why what you're doing at KBAC is important. All of this effort to educate residents about civic life and government, and it's a passion of mine. So I will use every tool at my disposal. You know, I'm sure there's a communication staff and social media and a mailing budget and outreach, and I will do everything I can to make sure people understand what the job is, and by doing that, try to make it relevant to people's lives so they can get benefit from this office as well. It's a great.
One thing I want to thank you for. This is very important. Back when we had the COVID, real bad when it first come out.
Yep.
I was the first one in Kent that got it, and I had got it bad. I called your office for some masks, and the person got the masks out to me the next day. Out the next day. And then after that, I don't know what that person did or how he did it, she or whoever it is, and they contacted the health department. And the health department started sending them to me, and I was going out on the trail down here, because I walk that trail sometimes, and I would pass them out to the homeless people. And I thank you I want to thank you for sending those masks, got them out to me right away, who never died. And I was the first black person in the state of Washington that got the COVID test. First one. If you can remember when that happened, Health Point, you know who that is?
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's why I got the test there. Got the shot. And they took film like what he done. They made a film and they were showing it on commercials. And you probably seen me, but you didn't know who I was. A lot of people seen didn't know who I was. But and then after that, Miss Gwen, I told her what I was doing. She started feeding me masks. And I don't know, I guess I'm stupid. I got COVID and I'm going down and walking down that trail giving the masks to them homeless people. But I learned something. I put them on the end of my walking stick and then I hand it to them like that. So thank you, Dave. You do a good job.
Thanks. I'm glad you're still standing. And, you know, that's one of the things that's going to be hard for me. That's the part of the job I really love. That, you know, this is the community I grew up into. And when you're in local legislative office, you get to be so connected to the community. You know, I was talking with Davies actually about this the other day, how we have a tendency in life to surround ourselves with people like us. Just subconsciously, we do that. And because of this job, this elected position I've had, my life is so much richer because I represent the most diverse corner of our state. And the chance to meet people of all ages and all races and all national origins, and to spend time in mosques and gurdwaras and learning different cultures and just being a part of the community, listening, learning, doing the best you can to deliver results. And I think in this new role, I'm going to be running a state agency in Olympia, and I'm going to have to work a lot harder to try to stay connected. And it is those things, delivering masks, delivering small grants to local community-based organizations, and being at the community center with your sleeves rolled up with a mentoring program, and all those things that really bring me joy in this job. I'm going to have to work a little harder to find those opportunities.
Alrighty. I believe it's now time for your closing statement, but I believe you've said enough to claim one. But if you want to add a little bit more, please do.
I want to end by talking a little bit about values. I talked about this job is about our natural resources. But there's also a responsibility to advance the values of equity and justice. And there are ways that we can use this department. It starts by hiring the most diverse staff in the history of this agency. We also have 100 different advisory committees and task forces that advise the work. We need to make sure they reflect the diversity of the state and that we listen to them. We also have a law in this state, an environmental justice law, and by that, environmental justice is the intersection really between social justice and the environment. We all know which neighborhoods tend to see the most pollution and see the dumps, and the state law says that we're supposed to perform racial justice assessments on major agency actions, but they exempted almost all the Department of Natural Resources. And I intend, the law doesn't say we can't do them, so I intend to go beyond the requirement of that law and do those racial justice assessments when we're making big agency actions. And I think this is a strong difference between my opponent and I. And I don't mean to be too negative, but we both have long-term records in elected bodies, and I think our voting records are an indication of how we use our power, how we use our action. And I've tried throughout my career in King County to advance inclusion, to advance voting rights, make it easier to vote here in King County, supporting cultural ambassadors in different communities. My opponent, on the other hand, as a member of Congress, actually voted against the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, which would have made it much more equitable and fair. And so there is a stark difference. Often it's hard to discern differences between candidates, and I think it's for some of those issues. The Seattle Medium, the African American newspaper, very proud to have earned their endorsement in this race, and they cited the work in the community. And so I just want people to know this, even though the work is about protecting our clean air and water and preventing wildfires and recreation, there's an important responsibility to live up to those values of equity and social justice. And the other thing I would say, I don't know if anyone followed this primary. It was a very crowded race. There were 5 Democrats and 2 Republicans running. And I was out campaigning for over a year. We got to election night. I'm at my parents' home. We gather around the computer, refreshing. The results come in, and the 2 Republicans are in top, first and second. But I'm really close behind, too close to call. And so for days after day, we watched the results trickle in. You know, and people would do spreadsheets. All right, Walla Walla County has 2,000 votes left to count, and you're getting 19%. And we got near the end, and all the numbers experts said, Dave, you're going to fall short. The 2 Republicans are going to advance. Well, we went and got the list of everyone whose ballot got rejected because they forgot to sign it or because their signatures didn't match. And we got 355 volunteers mobilized, and we cross-referenced that data with the Democratic Party's data, because I'm a Democrat, and we made phone calls and went door to door to every single Democratic voter whose ballot had been rejected. We had people driving an hour and a half to find one voter in Eastern Washington. And when the dust settled, after 2.5 million people voted, and a statewide hand recount, we secured a spot on the ballot in the closest primary in Washington state history by 49 votes. And I wanted to finish there because the takeaway is simple. Every vote matters, and people's participation matters. And regardless of whether they want to vote for me or for somebody else, it's so important to take that time to fill out that ballot. Take the time to learn the issues and fill out both sides of that ballot, and do it, because it's the one day of the year where we're all equal. We all have the same power on that day. We all get one vote. So that's my final charge, would be to get out. Whoever you vote for, Democratic, Republican, Libertarian, Green, vote.
Yes. All right. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Hello, I'm Adam Smith. I'm the congressman who represents the 9th District of the state of Washington, running for re-election this year. I grew up in SeaTac. I'm a graduate of Tahiti High School. I've spent my entire life in the 9th District. I got involved in politics primarily because of my father, who was in a union. He was the secretary-treasurer of his machinist union, where he worked as a baggage handler at SeaTac Airport. I'm just really passionate about the community. I'm passionate about representative democracy, and I'm passionate about equality of opportunity. I think everybody should have a shot in this country, and that's primary focus of the policy work that I do.
First question, do you believe that Vice President Kamala Harris is capable of being our next president of the United States? Why or why not?
Yeah, 100%. I'm an enthusiastic supporter of Kamala Harris. I was one of the earliest voices after President Biden's debate saying that he should step aside. There were a lot of different reasons for that. But one was because of how strongly I believe in Kamala Harris. I think she's got great experience. She's very articulate. I think she'll be a tremendous leader for this country. And I think she's run a very strong campaign. So I'm going to enthusiastically support her, and I hope the rest of the country does as well.
In your mind, does diversity, equity, and inclusion matter with respect to the economy, healthcare, and livelihood? Why or why not?
Absolutely, diversity, equity, and inclusion matter. As I said in my opening comments, opportunity is something I'm really passionate about, and particularly focusing on opportunity for those who have faced disadvantages, who don't have as much opportunity. As I mentioned, I grew up in a blue-collar family, and certainly working-class people who don't have money or connections have challenges. But we also have to confront the reality of bigotry, bias, racism, and misogyny in our country. Women and people of color, particularly Black people and Native Americans, have been discriminated against in this country, and in many ways continue to be discriminated against. If we're going to achieve equality of opportunity, we have to affirmatively reach out into those communities and make sure that those opportunities are being offered. It's something I've done in my office from the very beginning. I have reached out and recruited amongst various different groups in the Hispanic community, the Black community, the Asian community, focused on making sure that I'm giving women an opportunity. And this isn't about changing the standards or the expectations. It's about making sure that we overcome the bias, the bigotry, the racism that has denied people the opportunity to show the talent that they have. So yes, we need to do outreach if we're going to get to true equality in this country.
What is your opinion on universal health care?
I'm a huge supporter of universal health care. I'm a co-sponsor of Medicare for All. I support a single-payer health care system. I support a universal access health care system, and I support single-payer. Some people have problems with single-payer. That's fine. There's a bunch of different ways to get to universal access. Personally, I'd like to see single payer, but we need universal access to healthcare system. Universal access to healthcare in this country. I was a strong and proud supporter of the Affordable Care Act, which brought health insurance to some 20 to 30 million people who didn't have it previously. It's a good step. We need to get the rest of the way there. We can't really have a fair economy and a fair amount of opportunity if people don't have health care. So I will continue to work to get universal access to health care.
In July of this year, you made a statement regarding President Biden in which you stated it would be a mistake for him to continue with his campaign for president and that no candidate is owed another term in office based solely on past performance. Does that include you as you are running for yet another term in Congress?
100% includes me. Now, the thing is, I think I am unquestionably the most qualified person to run. And I will also say that my past performance is indicative of what I'm going to do going forward. I have aggressively worked to pass legislation to help this district. I got full paid parental leave for all federal employees for 12 weeks because of that experience and because of my hard work. My customer service and the customer service of my staff is the best you will find. We are committed to working for this district. You can look at my record of standing up for progressive priorities, standing up against racism, bigotry, bias against the LGBTQ community, my leadership on the Armed Services Committee on those issues. You can see all of the work and all the connections that I have to this district. I don't deserve re-election. It's not owed to me. I think people should vote for me because I am the best qualified person to do the job, and I've showed over and over and over again that that's true, and that I'm going to be relentless and work hard on behalf of the people of my district. So I don't have any doubt that I'm the best person to represent this district for the next 2 years.
You have served in various political offices for over 28 years. Why do you think voters should continue to vote for you?
Because I'm good at my job, and I believe that being an effective legislator is enormously important. I have delivered for this district, and right now today I am as passionate, as enthusiastic, and working as hard as I ever have. Plus, I have the experience and the connections. I know how the legislative process works. I don't just care about what my constituents bring to me. I can also deliver, because I know how to work with the various communities throughout our district. Just to give you a few examples, I work with the Somali community to help fund the Somali Health Board and public housing with the Somali community. The Filipino community built public housing for seniors. I helped fund that project. I'm working with the Congolese community in SeaTac now as they set up a community center and also help to build affordable housing. Communities across this district I have connected with and worked with. I have the experience, the connections, and the commitments to be an incredibly effective legislator. And look, this job is not an entry-level position. If you have no prior experience representing people, if you have no prior experience working to pass legislation, it's going to be hard for you to be effective representing this district, even if you'd like to be, even if you care, even if you're trying. So that experience that I have, those connections that I have, and my work ethic are delivering for the people of this district.
Closing statement.
Well, I think I pretty much said it all. Your questions were really good at setting it up. I just want to reemphasize the fact that my experience is an asset for this community. Because I'm in a leadership position, I've been able to get legislation passed to help with transit-oriented development, to help transfer property to nonprofits so that they could build more housing, property that used to belong to the Sound Transit folks. That legislative experience and commitment is good for this district. And again, I'll close with what I've said. There's just no doubt in my mind that I will do the best job of representing the people of this district and the best job of delivering on progressive priorities for the people of this district.
My name is Melissa Chaudhry, and I'm running for Congress in Washington's 9th District. I come before you as a grassroots candidate fully supported by the people. Unlike our incumbent, over 95% of whose campaign funding is provided by special interests who profit from war and violence at our expense. You can check his campaign contributions and mine at opensecrets.org. All of my campaign contributions come from individuals, and that's in keeping with my principles. I believe in government of, by, and for the people, not the corporations or foreign interests. I bring personal and professional experience in climate action on several continents, as well as addiction treatment, affordable housing, sustainable agriculture, immigrant support, and real economic development and community empowerment, especially for marginalized communities. I'm not a career politician. I'm a hardworking American dedicated to reckoning with our legacy of racism and imperial violence and doing everything I can to form a more perfect union and help America become the nation we always aspired to be. My mission is to help America grow past discrimination at home and dangerous and outdated hegemony abroad into a thriving, inclusive democracy that participates responsibly as one member of a peaceful, multipolar world. As a Navy daughter, wife of a disabled Army veteran, mother in a BIPOC family, and lifelong activist for peace and prosperity, I understand the costs of war, and I will fight for peace, an end to genocide and apartheid on our dime, and respect for human rights at home and abroad. On climate change, I'm an urgent optimist with extensive frontline experience on 3 continents. On immigration, I champion a fair, welcoming, and dignified process that keeps families together, strengthens America, and supports economic success for everyone. I believe in reparations and in making sure that the Black community in particular is invested in a way that compensates for generations, in fact centuries, of exploitation and disempowerment. On constitutional rights, I am fully in support of our fundamental freedoms, including speech and assembly, unlike our incumbent, who has been formally condemned and censured by the 43rd LD for his appalling criticism of these freedoms.
And now we have our next candidate is is Miss Melissa Chaudhry. Melissa Chaudhry, excuse me. And she is in competition with Adam Smith for District 9, or House of Representatives. And I am going to have Melissa Chaudhry give an opening statement.
Good evening. It's a great pleasure to be here with you, and I'd like to take a few moments to say thank you to the Kent Black Action Commission, both for the invitation and for all of the impressive work that you already do. I've been following your work with Juneteenth and with the action days that you host at the Capitol, and it's incredibly important to uplift and organize the voices and the political engagement of the Black community. So thank you for the work that you do. My name is Melissa Chaudhry, and I'm a candidate for Congress here in Washington's 9th Congressional District. We are right in the heart of that district here, Mercer Island, Bellevue, South Seattle, all the way down to Federal Way, about 800,000 people. In this district, we have an extremely unusual demographic breakdown. We are over 60% people of color, and over 30% of the folks here were born abroad. So we have an opportunity to uplift the voices of those who are historically marginalized, and yet who have the greatest to contribute to the future of America. I say that with a complete wholeheartedness because believing in liberty and justice for all is fundamental to who we are as Americans, and it doesn't come with an asterisk attached. That's the reason I got into politics, and it took me a long time to discover that this is where I wanted to go. When I was a child, my father was deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan, and I saw the U.S. military being used for things that violated liberty and justice for all. And I looked around in my own home communities, and I saw the wealth inequality and the incarceration patterns and the racism that also violated the fundamental principles of liberty and justice for all that I was told my country stood for. So figuring out how to reckon with that discrepancy and how to be an American with integrity has been the journey of my life. I am not a career politician. I have lived and worked on several continents, primarily on grassroots economic empowerment, often but not always connected to climate resilience. I've also done frontline work in the nonprofit space here in affordable housing, in making sure that job empowerment is available to folks and jobs training, and in LGBTQ and immigrant support. And I have been very proud to be called a co-conspirator by some of my Black friends growing up. So from here, moving forward, running for Congress to me is about restoring American principle and American integrity and the rule of law to this country. And it is about making sure that the future that we create together is better than the past we have coming from. We must reckon with our legacy of racism and imperial violence and militarism. And we must do that in a way that honors and uplifts the fundamental principles of America and the integrity that this country always should have had. We can be a thriving, prosperous, inclusive, multiracial democracy in a vibrant and peaceful multipolar world, but we have to change course. We need fresh thinking in Congress. We need people who are coming from the grassroots, who are not supported in their campaigns by the big PACs or by foreign interests or by the war machine, all of which our incumbent currently is. And so I am offering to serve this district as the first female congressperson elected from it, and the first from a BIPOC family who understands racism and discrimination, not as much in my own life, but very much in the family that I am in. So that's who I am. I am grateful for the chance to be here, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you. The first question I have is, if elected, what are your top 3 priorities for the people of District 9 as you being their representative?
3 things: discrimination, housing, and climate change. The stranger endorsed me both in the primary and the general election in great part for my housing policy. They consider that I have a very strong and robust approach to that. I'd like to acknowledge that our incumbent has done some great work on housing, which I would like to carry forward. But we need much more affordable housing in this district, and we need to make sure that the affordable housing we have stays affordable and is protected from the increasing pressures of rising prices that drive folks out. Folks who have paid off their mortgages need to be able to stay there. Folks who haven't been able to access a mortgage need support to get into it. And we need federal funding to be going not just to support homeownership, which it already is, but to be going to subsidize rent support and public housing in a very robust and accessible way. I also believe in community land trusts, which were originated in the Black community in the South, as a way to protect the land that the community owned from predatory pressures. So, discrimination is another thing that I would tackle head on. I see that in our immigration system. I see that in the way that we have structural racism here at home and have since almost time immemorial. No, have had for a few centuries. And we need to make sure that we dismantle that as deeply as possible, that we invest in reparations, and that we invest in small business support to make sure that all of the entrepreneurial energy that is present in all of these marginalized communities, particularly yours, has as much opportunity and support as possible to go ahead and flourish. Number 3, I am a signatory to the Climate Champion, the Green New Deal program, so I will be supporting all of the Green New Deal legislation that is currently on offer on the table. That will make sure that we invest in strengthening our communities in a way that reduces our risks of climate disaster affecting us directly, and invests in entrepreneurship and in making sure that we build a robust economic future as well as a just and equitable and resilient future as we are dealing with more and more and more floods, fires, and crises of various kinds, which may not affect as much here, but certainly affect the country and will affect the supply chains that are also impacting us. I believe that responding to climate change should be primarily an entrepreneurial endeavor, and that the federal government should be investing in that, especially in a proactively reparations-oriented way.
Thank you for that. In that answer, you mentioned investing in reparations as one of the 3 things in relation to discrimination. Can you tell us more about how you see that? How you see that?
Most of the wealth of this country is derived from 2 sources: stolen land and stolen labor. And that stolen labor has been from the black community for centuries, and still is. We see that in wage gaps. We see that in other ways that this manifests. And we see it in the massive wealth gap between white families and black families, having a lot to do with the racism during the GI Bill era some decades ago, a couple generations ago now, where white families could buy into the housing market at very low prices and have been able to just have those assets accrue over a couple generations now, and black families were excluded at the very beginning, and so now we're still dealing with those consequences, let alone going back to slavery. The source of wealth in this country has largely been on the backs of black people, and that deserves direct, clear reparations in a number of different forms. For some, investing in a small business opportunity is going to be a way that reparations will work. For others, it should be direct cash assistance. For others, it should be land. I support having multiple options available for how to manifest reparations based on individual preferences, but I think it needs to happen.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Diversity, equity, and inclusion. I think so far you have expressed some interest in that word. So, could you expand on that a little bit, if you would, please?
Sure. I'm an unusual white person, as you might notice by the fact that I wear a hijab now. But when I was in high school, I was a founding member of our high school's Diversity Alliance. That was the name for our DEI club, basically. I was the only white kid, and yet I was the one who my peers selected to be our PR official, which surprised me, no doubt. But I did my best to live up to that trust. And that is something that I would like to carry forward. I have always been more comfortable in spaces where I am in the racial minority. That's been true whether I've been working in Ghana, in West Africa, or in Pakistan, or Indonesia, or Central America, all of which are places I've worked. And it's true when I am in my mosque as well. From a structural standpoint, I was very happy to recently be with the Washington Women's Foundation at their annual convening, and they held a whole panel on DEI in education with some truly outstanding speakers, making the point that investing in DEI in education in particular is a fundamental piece of functional reparations, right? Making sure that we affirmatively, proactively reach out to communities that have been historically marginalized, mistreated, abused, exploited, and bring them in and give them that necessary lift to come up to the position of being able to participate fully and equally in a fair, free, and opportunity-rich society. So I believe in this as a fundamental piece of what America is and should be, and it's something that I wholeheartedly support.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you for that answer. Here's the next question. Do you believe that Vice President Kamala Harris is capable of being the next president of the United States?
100%.
Thank you. Sorry. Are there any questions for anyone out in the audience right now? Yes.
I think this is my first time meeting you. And you get a good introduction. You're a good one. Now, you talked about racism, and you talked about different things in that area. If you elect to Congress, I'd like to know, would you vote for the John Lewis Act?
Is it more to the question, or should I answer?
Yeah.
Absolutely. No, supporting the John Lewis Voting Rights Act is one that's high on my priority list. I was very honored to be able to hear him speak live when I was about 16, and we traveled to D.C. for Obama's inauguration, which was the highlight of my teen years, actually. And he spoke passionately about the golden thread of democracy and how we could be closer to it or further from it, but it always shone with promise in our lives. And that speech of his was very influential for me. And I tried to track down a transcript of it later on, and was told that no, he speaks off the cuff. So I would be honored to vote in support of this.
Thank you. See, that was an easy one for you.
That's fine.
See, I'm familiar with John Lewis. I marched with him.
Oh, wonderful.
And when I talks about him, well, let me move on. I get the emotion.
It's okay, yeah.
Now, the next question, women's right to make decisions for their own body. I can't understand how a government can make a decision for what you do with your own health. I don't understand that. I tell people this, a lot of them, especially men. How can you tell a woman what to do with her body? You can't even get pregnant. Would you vote for the women's right to vote, to make the decision for themselves?
Absolutely, I would. We need to protect the sovereignty of a human being, period, and that includes a woman's right to make any health care decision that she needs. I wish we lived in a perfect world where every pregnancy was wanted and intentional and consensual. We do not. And therefore, as a consequence, we need to make sure that every child is a wanted child and that every mother wants to be a mother. I am a mother by choice, delighted choice. And it's massive work, and it's life-changing, and it's challenging. And that needs to be something that's undertaken voluntarily or not at all.
I have one more. Books in school, Black history book being taken out of school. You elected, would you put in a bill to put them back in school?
Yes, and I hope that you would help me draft that bill. But it was important for me as a child to read things like Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry, and other books that very clearly and compellingly documented and created memorable and emotional stories around the experience of Black people in this country, around Black history, around slavery. Having that taken out of the environment, the milieu that's available to young people, is an incredible disservice to the future of this country. I would argue, at least on a moral level, it is criminal. It also violates freedom of speech and a number of other issues that we could get into on the legal standpoint, but simply from the shaping of the future of the country that we are and we want to be, we need this material there. So yes, I would support that.
Now this is the last one. This is the last one. I'm an old man now. Soon will be 88.
I wouldn't put you there over 60.
And I'm on Social Security and Medicare. It seems to me like you get a lot of people in Congress now wants to deal with that by cutting it. We can't live off of what we get now.
I know.
Would you fight for the seniors?
Absolutely. You have invested your life, and you have invested your life's work in this country. This country is obliged, fundamentally, to make sure that you are okay and that you are well taken care of. Wages have stagnated for the last 50 years. Medicare and Social Security have also stagnated, even as the cost of groceries and the cost of rent and housing and everything else has gone up. That's not okay. That means that we are leaving behind multiple generations of Americans who have less opportunity, less capacity, a lower standard of living than they should and than we used to. So yes, I will support seniors' rights and seniors' economic empowerment and just bare subsistence at a bare minimum, but it should be a dignified level of subsistence, and this shouldn't even be a question. Not from you on the political stage.
Thank you for your answer my question.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, that leads us to a closing statement, if you choose to say any more.
It would be an honor to represent you in Congress. And I say that with a whole heart. And I don't talk about this as I'm aspiring to power, I'm seeking a seat, I want any of the grandeur that might go along with it. That's not what this is about. This is about making sure that voices and values that have been excluded and marginalized or tokenized actually get center stage. If I get to Congress, I want to be your voice. I want to be our voice. And I want to be the voice of American principle and America's future. We have to have our future be better than our past. And right now we have situations that are just embedded in Congress that make sure that only the war machine is served, and that make sure that white supremacy is being served. And that's not okay with me as an American or as a human being. So I would like to work together with you, and I would like to carry forward the good work that's already been done for this district. But I want to do it in a way that's accountable to the people. Let me emphasize again that all of my campaign contributions come from individuals. I don't have anything coming from foreign interests, unlike our incumbent. I don't have anything coming from the war machine or corporate PACs, unlike our incumbent. And so I'm here as someone who aspires to be a sister in humanity and to make sure that we have an American future and a future for this district that is better than any of us thought possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I very much appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, good evening again, everybody. Thank you so much for your time and your patience to listen and learn. Thank you so much to those who came out for the filming, and thank you for those who were not able to be here regarding the candidates. Thank them for sending their videos with answers to the questions so we can upload those questions for the virtual production. That should be happening soon. Stay tuned on our website, www.kentblackactioncommission.org, and all other social media platforms, and that's Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. So we had a great turnout for this forum this year. Great support from community members, great support from our media and marketing team. So all in all, it was a great time today. We look forward to continuing our efforts towards civic engagement. So stay tuned to the works of KBAC. We're on the move now, and things are going to be really, really good. So thank you so much for coming and listening with your family, your friends, and thanks again to all of the candidates, whether they're incumbents or whatever the case may be. They graced us with their time, their presence, and their opportunity to speak to the community. Thank you so much. Have a great evening, and we'll talk to you soon. This is KBAC.